So I just finished All Her Fault over on Peacock, and that is your mystery thriller that was centered around the disappearance of a 5-year-old boy named Milo, but it also leans heavy into exploring fractured families and a web of tangled secrets. It honestly had me hooked through basically the first 6 episodes. I made it all the way through the end. The last 2 episodes fell a little bit flat for me, if I'm being honest, but it was still complex enough to keep you drawn in. But some of the things that were probably supposed to be climatic were a little bit anticlimactic for me. And that's just me. But the series follows the frantic search for missing Milo amid conflicting stories from Marissa Irvin and Jenny Kaminsky, all while Detective Alcaraz investigates while family tensions hint at a hidden tragedy with far-reaching consequences. That is basically what All Her Fault is about. And for this breakdown, I honestly thought the best way to do it was through the actual characters rather than trying to tell the entire story. That may get a little bit confusing. So I'm going to tell it through the characters in the story and just bear with me. And I think you'll kind of get a gist for what this show was. So we'll start with Marissa Irvin. Marissa is the mother of Milo, and we basically find her in the beginning desperate to find her son Milo. She shows up at a woman's house who she thought was Jenny Kaminsky, who she received a text from setting up a play date that, honestly, like I said, never was. And she basically learns that her son is missing at this point, and Jenny did not send her a text message, and everything that she thought to be true was, basically all a lie. So while she's grappling with her missing son, who eventually we learn is kidnapped, she also has to face all of this dark family drama. And in the midst of that, we basically learn through her character that her character is basically the anchor of the show for the drama. She is the one who is going to unravel, or not single-handedly, but the mystery is going to be basically unraveled through her uneasy friendship with Jenny, through her troubled relationship at best with her husband, Peter, and through Peter's siblings and some of their friends that are attached to the story. But we're going to learn that Marissa is going to go through a tragedy 6 years before that her husband thought was a good idea to try to clean up. And before I get to that, let me get to the Jenny of it. Jenny is the character that is mysterious the entire way. It honestly led me to question her motives. I've never read the book, so I went into this fresh. So Jenny's character I just questioned her motives the entire time. Her husband told her to kind of stay away because it may look like she's trying to be friends, to not get wrapped up in maybe a lawsuit, because we learned that the kidnapper was her nanny. So of course, if anything happens to this kid, then, she could potentially be legally liable because it was her nanny that she hired and should have background checked and whatnot, that kidnapped Milo and takes us down this journey of trying to get him back. All while that's going on, her own past and trauma, it starts to unravel within her own family. And as she kind of sits on that line between victim and suspect. But I thought that the dynamic between Jenny and Marissa was very dynamic, confusing at times as well. But it was the dynamic that kind of carried us through, because it kept making me ask, is she really her friend? Or why is she really doing this? Why won't she leave her alone? It kept me asking questions about their relationship. On the Marissa side, I don't believe in a real life scenario that you would befriend somebody who hired the person that kidnapped your kid. I just don't think that a rational person would befriend that person, but that's just me. But let's get into the Peter of it. Peter is probably our most dynamic character. He is our most confusing character. He is the person and the character that this story truly revolves around. Everything bad, in my opinion, began and ended with Peter. It was Peter's idea to switch babies 6 years prior from a car accident, when his son and Marissa's son actually died in a car accident, and switch the kid with the child that survived that became Milo, who we learn is Carrie, aka sometimes Josie's son. We learn that Peter has erratic behavior. We learn that Peter disabled his brother and lied about it for all these years, enough to, again with Peter, drive his sister crazy to a point of addiction. And now he basically blames her for her addiction. And as he learns that he's dating their friend Colin, he gets very upset and erratic about that because Colin is a gambling addict. And oh my God, two addicts shouldn't be dating each other. And that's not my business. But everything bad began and ended with Peter. And in the story, the detective told Peter and Marissa that there was going to be a ransom demand. And sure enough, there was a ransom demand. And instead of going to the police, what does Peter do? Let me handle it myself. Another bad decision. But I was a little confused on this part, but we learned that Peter basically set up a meeting to pay the ransom because he got the cash for the ransom, but he shows up and kills the guy that is actually has their son in the bathroom. And I'm just not sure. That part just kind of confused me a little bit. I'm not sure if it made me ask, did he set up this entire thing? Which I don't think he did. I really do think that Carrie, aka Josie, through her interactions with her father and her by chance meeting a year prior at this point with Milo, I just don't think that Peter set it all up, but it wouldn't surprise me if Peter didn't set it all up. So Peter was a very complex character with a lot of dark secrets that all came out. And they honestly, eventually, after all of his secrets come out, they basically eventually catch up to him and ultimately lead to his demise. We talked about Detective Alcaraz, and while in the story, he is more of a side character, in my opinion. We see a lot of the investigation, but in my opinion, the story really revolves around the family and the dynamics and the crazy stuff that's going on within the family. But the investigation, while it is important to the story, is all, in my opinion, more of a subplot rather than the main plot. The big question was, who took Milo? But we learned, in the investigation in the first few episodes, we learned who took him. We eventually learned why he was took. We eventually learned, and I would just touch on Carrie, the whole Carrie and Milo of it. We learned that, like I said earlier, Peter stole Carrie's kid. So this was Milo was actually her son. And while she didn't initially know that, through the chance meeting when Milo, colors sometimes equal a taste or a food or something like that, and their rare condition that they share, that's what sparked it all. Like, hey, this could be my kid because I have this rare condition as well, and almost nobody will have this. So she basically starts watching the family for a year and, maneuvers her way into getting hired by Jenny. She befriends Marissa's nanny, and which is how she eventually gets close to Milo, which in my opinion, that was very smart of her too. Very smart of her character to befriend the nanny. That way this kid feels comfortable with me. So when I do eventually kidnap him, it's not going to be a big shock to the kid because, hey, the kid's used to me. He's been around me. We've had ice cream together. We've been to the marathon together to see my dad. So of course Milo will be comfortable with somebody who he thinks is a friend of the family. But that's the one thing I will say. Speaking of friend of the family and the Josie Carey, episode 7, her story, from her perspective, it landed a little flat for me. It didn't make me sympathize with her. I do appreciate the clarity. Maybe you could have gave it to me just maybe throughout the show. And I guess they did kind of tell us a little bit more about her, but honestly, seeing it from her perspective didn't really change my opinion because I still thought it was a really good show, but it didn't make me be like, wow. So her perspective didn't give me that wow factor. And while we're talking about that, the Peter of it and him saving but not saving his son, which confused me because this is what made me think that maybe he had something to do with it or maybe he didn't. Because you killed the kidnapper, hid your face like you said, put your son in the car, the trunk of a car, allow him to be found, and then, brought it, then y'all show up with your wife to the police station to pick him up and you act like, and I guess if you pay attention to his character throughout the show, he always kind of has like this dead face, like there's nothing that's truly bothering him, and maybe nothing is bothering him because he seems to be in control of every situation and knows what's going on. So maybe that's why the way he was portrayed was to be kind of this stone faced, sort of unfazed. And even when he did cry, after seeing what he's done and how everything kind of unfolded, it almost makes everything that Peter did performative. But what did you guys think of Peter's arc in this? Because, I mean, he never really had a good father hero arc. He was basically the true villain of the story. I guess we could say Carrie was a lesser villain, but I guess she was a villain as well. I guess we could somewhat sympathize with her for losing her kid and, kind of trying to get him back in this way, because if my kid, who I thought was deceased, really wasn't, I'm not sure if I wouldn't try to get him back as well. I may try to do it through some legal channels personally, but, you know, she was young and she was acting on emotion, and it was her kid at the end of the day, and she was right that it was her kid. I would ask which character's secret surprised you the most, but all the big secrets came from Peter. So if it's anybody other than Peter, then I would be surprised to hear your answer. But please let me know which character's secrets surprised you the most if it wasn't Peter's, because quite literally every secret came from Peter. And then that's just my opinion. But like I said, All Her Fault was a great show. It delivered on its layered exploration of deception and grief within like a family dynamic. It was a mystery thriller. It had a very compelling kidnapping story that turned out to be a grieving mother trying to get her kid back type of story. And I can rock with that. Let me know what you guys thought of All Her Fault. And I guess in hindsight, it was never all her fault. It was all his fault. But, good way to throw all of us off, because, like I said, it was never all her fault. It was all Peter. Peter was the orchestrator of everything bad, and it was never any of the women's fault. It was all his fault. But I will see you next time. Thank you for watching.